The envelope was propped against my coffee maker, like someone had placed it there on purpose, which they had, because my neighbor had accepted a certified letter on my behalf and left it on my counter while I was doing my physical therapy exercises on the living room floor. I almost didn't open it that morning. My hip was aching from the previous day's session, and I still moved slow enough that small tasks felt like negotiations. But I saw the return address, a law office in Clearwater, and something in my stomach went cold before my brain had even caught up. I sat down at the kitchen table, one hand braced on the counter because my left side still didn't fully trust itself, and I opened it. The first word I saw was harassment. Below that, repeated contact, multiple incidents, documented pattern of unwanted presence. I read it twice. Then I read it a third time because my brain was doing that thing it does when something is so wrong it can't load properly, like a file the system refuses to open. My aunt and uncle were filing a civil harassment complaint against me. My aunt, my uncle, the same two people who had shown up at my grandmother's funeral with matching blazers and a real estate agent's business card, before my grandmother was even in the ground. I flipped to the second page, then the third. There were dates. There were cities, two different ones, both over 3 hours from where I currently lived in this rental house, with its wide doorways and its grab bars, surrounded by the kind of furniture you rearrange when your mobility isn't what it used to be. The complaint said I had driven to their neighborhood on 4 separate occasions, that I had parked outside their home, that I had appeared uninvited at a family gathering, that I had sent threatening messages through a neighbor. I set the pages down flat on the table and looked at the window for a long moment. Then I turned to page 4, and there it was, tucked inside a proposed settlement paragraph that was written in the language of reasonableness, the way something ugly is always wrapped in something neat. In exchange for withdrawal of the complaint, defendant agrees to transfer her interest in the lakefront property located at my grandmother's lake house. The one I had spent every summer of my childhood in, the one my grandmother had updated her will to leave specifically to me 3 months before she died, after my aunt had told her that she and my uncle were in talks with a developer who wanted to tear down the structure and build a resort property on the lot. My grandmother had been furious. She had called me from the hospital room, where she was receiving her final rounds of dialysis, and said, "I am not letting them sell it. That house is yours." I had the will. I had the notarized amendment. I had her voice on a voicemail I had saved for 2 years because I had known, in the way you always know with certain family members, that the paper trail was going to matter. I pulled out a folder from the cabinet under the kitchen sink, the one I had labeled Lake House Documents the week after probate closed. And then I pulled out a second folder, the one I had started the day after the funeral and labeled very simply, Them. The hearing date was set for 3 weeks out. My physical therapist told me that the car ride alone, 45 minutes each way, would be a full day's exertion. I told her I understood. I wore the one blazer that fit over my compression garment. I took my medication at 6 in the morning so the worst of the fatigue would pass before 10. I packed both folders in a canvas tote bag and looped it over my walker because I still needed the walker for distances, and a courthouse is nothing but distance. When I got there, my aunt and uncle were already in the hallway outside the hearing room, standing close together the way people stand when they've rehearsed the scene. My aunt had on her church face, soft expression, slightly downturned mouth, the look of a woman who has been patient for a very long time. My uncle wore a sport coat and carried a manila folder under his arm like a prop. He saw me first. He didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied, the way someone looks when a thing they planned has arrived on schedule. My aunt reached out and touched my arm before I could step past her. "We don't want to do this," she said, loud enough for the people near us to hear. "We just want what's right." My uncle stepped closer and said more quietly, "Sign the house over to the estate and this goes away. Simple." I looked at him for a moment and said, "I'll let the judge decide what's simple." He exhaled through his nose. "You're going to embarrass yourself in there." I didn't answer. I walked through the door. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. A judge behind a raised desk, a clerk to his left, a court officer near the wall. My aunt and uncle sat at the plaintiff table with a man in a gray suit, who had the look of someone who had filed this type of paperwork before and expected no complications. I sat at the other table, my walker folded beside me, my 2 folders flat on the surface in front of me. The judge looked at me. "You're representing yourself today?" "Yes, Your Honor." He nodded once, then looked down at the complaint. Their attorney went first. He described a pattern of escalation. He used words like fear and ongoing campaign and documented incidents. He mentioned 4 separate dates, 4 separate sightings. He said my aunt had been afraid to leave her own home. He said my uncle had installed a security camera because of me. My aunt dabbed at her eye at the exact right moment. The judge looked at me. Response? I stood slowly. The compression garment made everything deliberate. I rested one hand on the table and kept my voice level. Before we discuss anyone's feelings, I said, I'd like the dates read into the record. Their attorney blinked. The dates are in the filing, Your Honor. I'd like them read aloud, I said, one by one. The judge looked at the page, then at the clerk. Read them. The clerk read a date in March, a date in April, 2 dates in May, each one with a time and a location. Each one attached to a description, seen parked outside residence, appeared at family event, observed on property. As the clerk read, something settled inside me, like a chair finding level ground. Because I knew those dates. I knew them the way you know the coordinates of the worst weeks of your life. The judge noticed my expression change. He lifted his hand and the clerk stopped. You recognize these dates, he said. Yes, I said, I do. I opened the first folder and slid a document across the table toward the clerk. That's my discharge summary from Riverside Rehabilitation Center, I said. Admission date and discharge date. The clerk handed it to the judge. My uncle's jaw shifted. Their attorney looked at the document without moving. The judge scanned the page. Then he looked at the date at the top. Then he looked at the 4 dates from the complaint. Every single alleged incident fell inside my inpatient stay. His expression changed, not dramatically, not like a movie, but the quality of his attention shifted, the way a room feels different when the temperature drops by 1 degree. He looked at my uncle. Sir, he said, stand up. My uncle stood the way a man stands when he thinks he's still in control of something. Shoulders back, chin up. He smoothed the front of his sport coat. These dates, the judge said, holding the discharge summary and the complaint side by side, place your niece at 4 locations near your home while she was simultaneously listed as an inpatient at a rehabilitation facility. My uncle didn't flinch. She wasn't there the entire time. Rehab patients get day passes. She could have left. The judge looked at me. Your Honor, I said. I was non-weight-bearing for the first 6 weeks of my stay. I was not permitted to leave the facility. I have a restriction note from my attending physician. I slid a second document forward. My uncle shook his head. She's exaggerating. She drove before she was supposed to. She's always pushed past what people told her. The judge's eyes moved to my walker, folded beside my chair. She is sitting with an assistive device, he said flatly, and you filed this complaint as though she were making regular trips across the county. My aunt's voice came in soft practiced. She's stronger than she seems. She always has been. She does things to make us look bad. The judge didn't argue with her. He didn't even look at her. He said, ma'am, not yet. She stopped. He turned back to the table. Do you have documentation beyond the discharge summary? I opened the second section of my folder and laid out 3 more pages. The physician restriction note. A physical therapy schedule showing my session times, twice daily at the facility, for the entire period in question. A medication administration log with nurse-initialed entries every morning and evening of those weeks. I had never been so grateful for bureaucracy in my life. The judge read each page without hurrying. Their attorney stood partway and began, Your Honor, the plaintiff's account. Sit down, the judge said without looking up. The attorney sat. My uncle made his first real mistake about 20 minutes in. The judge asked him, slowly and directly, how did you know your niece was present near your home on these 4 occasions? We saw her, my uncle said. You personally? Yes. The judge wrote something down. Then he looked at the complaint again. Your filing includes a witness statement from someone named Glenn Whitaker. That's our neighbor, my uncle said. He saw her too. His address. My uncle gave an address, confident, unit number included. The judge nodded once to the clerk, verify. The clerk typed a pause, a longer pause. Your Honor, the clerk said carefully, that unit number does not appear in the building records for that address. My uncle's attorney shifted in his chair, not much, just enough. It's a typo, my uncle said immediately. On a sworn witness statement, the judge said, the person is real. Then produce him, the judge said. If he exists and personally witnessed these incidents, we can hear from him today. My uncle looked at his attorney. His attorney looked at the table. We can subpoena him for a later date, the attorney offered, attempting smooth. No, the judge said. You filed this as an emergency harassment matter. That means we don't adjourn to find witnesses who should already be here. The room got quieter. And in that quiet, my uncle did the thing he always does when a situation stops obeying him. He went for the wound. She's been trying to steal from this family for years, he said, turning toward the room like he was making a speech. She manipulated an old woman into changing her will. She isolated her from us. The judge said, enough. One word, no volume behind it, just wait. My uncle stopped mid-sentence. The judge picked up the complaint again and turned to the settlement page. He read it. Then he looked at their attorney. Explain to me, he said, why a civil harassment complaint contains a clause requiring the transfer of a lakefront property. Their attorney smiled slightly. It's a negotiated resolution, Your Honor, to avoid ongoing conflict. To avoid conflict, the judge repeated, by taking her property. The family has a long-standing interest in the estate. She inherited it, the judge said. Through a valid probated will, he set the page down. This reads like leverage. My aunt's voice came from the side, a whisper pitched just loud enough. It was always meant to stay in the family. The judge looked at her for the first time. One full look. Then he looked away. Do you have documentation of your aunt and uncle requesting to find this property outside of a court filing? He asked me. I reached into the back pocket of my second folder, one page, printed cleanly. A text thread I said from 8 months ago. I slid it forward. My uncle wrote, sign it over or we'll make your life very complicated. My uncle's face went dark red. That was taken out of context, he said. Context it, the judge said, reading. My uncle's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The judge read for 3 full seconds. Then he looked up. Sir, you sent this message. I was frustrated. It wasn't a threat. The judge set the page down and looked at the room like he was deciding something quietly before he spoke it out loud. Clerk, he said, mark this as Exhibit A. Then my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look at it, but I saw the name. It was the woman who caretakes my grandmother's lake house, checks on it seasonally, has held the spare key for years. I had texted her when the complaint arrived to make sure nothing was wrong at the property. The judge noticed me look down. Is that relevant? He asked. I'm not sure, I said honestly. May I check? He nodded once. I read the message. Someone is here showing the house. A man and a woman. They said you authorized a showing. They have a lockbox. The air went out of my lungs. I looked up at the judge. Your Honor, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. My caretaker is at my grandmother's property right now. She says someone is there with a real estate agent, claiming I authorized a showing. My aunt's face went completely still. My uncle's expression didn't change fast enough. The judge looked at him for a moment. Then he said to me, call her back. Put it on speaker. I did. She picked up on the first ring. Odessa, I said, I have you on speaker. I'm in a courthouse right now. Can you describe what you're seeing? Yes. Her voice was low, careful. A man and a woman. The man said he's a real estate agent. He had a lockbox key. He said he had authorization papers. But when I asked to see them, the form didn't look right to me. No notary stamp. So I called you. The judge leaned forward slightly. Ma'am, this is the judge presiding over a matter involving this property. Are the individuals still on the premises? A beat. Then yes, they're in the house right now. Do not allow them to remove anything. Tell them to stop and wait. He paused. If they refuse, call the local sheriff's department immediately. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Do it now. Keep this line open. He turned and looked at my uncle. My uncle was staring at the surface of the table like something underneath it might give way. Your Honor, their attorney began. The judge lifted one hand, just one hand. That was all it took. He waited until we heard Odessa's voice again, quieter, saying something to the people inside. Then he looked at my uncle directly. No hurry, no theater. Someone is at that property right now with a fabricated authorization while this hearing is in session. My uncle said quietly, I don't know what you're talking about. The judge said, you filed 4 incident dates that fall inside her inpatient stay. You submitted a witness from an address that doesn't exist. You attached a property transfer clause to a harassment complaint. And now someone is at the property you want, with paperwork. On the same morning, you have her sitting in a courtroom. He let that sit. Counsel, he said to their attorney, this is not a harassment case. This is an attempt to use the court as a mechanism to seize property while the owner is occupied here. Their attorney said, Your Honor, my clients have genuine. Stop, the judge said, not unkindly, just final. He looked at me. Do you want the individuals at the property identified and the authorization document brought to this court? Yes, I said. Odessa, the judge said toward the phone, ask the individuals to present their documents and remain on the property. A sheriff's deputy is being contacted. A pause. Then her voice came through, slightly tighter than before. They're leaving. They just heard that, and they're walking to their car. Get the license plate if you can. A pause. She read the numbers slowly and clearly, and the clerk typed. The judge turned to the court officer. Contact the county sheriff's department. I want those individuals located and that authorization document collected as evidence. What happened after that didn't take long, but it felt long. The way things feel when you've been holding yourself together for weeks. And the moment you can stop, your body wants to stop all at once. The judge denied the petition. He dismissed the complaint in full. He issued a temporary protective order, preventing my aunt and uncle from contacting me or accessing the lake house property pending a formal investigation. Then he looked at the court officer. I want this matter referred for investigation of potential filing fraud and witness statement fabrication. The evidence in this complaint contains material inconsistencies with documented medical records. He held up the page with my uncle's text message, and at least one prior communication from the plaintiff suggests this was a deliberate strategy, not a genuine safety concern. My aunt stood up. We are the victims, she said, her voice breaking at the right edge. We are family, we just wanted what was ours. The judge looked at her for a long moment. Patient, direct, like someone who had heard every version of that sentence and knew exactly what it was worth. Ma'am, he said, that property was not yours. It was hers, and you filed paperwork designed to take it from her while she was still learning how to walk without assistance. He paused. You miscalculated how much she could still fight. In the hallway afterward, a court officer walked with me to the elevator. My aunt and uncle were behind us somewhere, their attorney speaking to them in a low voice, something clipped and urgent that I didn't try to hear. My uncle said my name once. Just my name, the way he used to say it when I was a kid, and he wanted me to understand something without having to say it out loud. I didn't turn around. I pressed the elevator button and waited, and when the doors opened, I stepped inside and let them close behind me. The compression garment pressed into my ribs. My hip ached the way it always did in the afternoon. The canvas tote with both folders hung off the handle of my folded walker. I looked at my reflection in the brushed metal doors. Blurry, just a shape, a woman standing upright in a blazer. And I thought about my grandmother sitting in her hospital room, telling me that house is yours, and how I had believed her but hadn't understood yet what it would cost to make that true. Now I knew exactly what it cost. And for the first time since I opened that envelope against my coffee maker, the paper agreed with me.